tried in vain to use the Vulcan mind meld to will people to come up to my booth. Every so often, I would catch someone's eye, and that person would either look away quickly or give me what we in Miami call the "pero qué pobrecito" look, which, for those of you who don't speak Spanish, translates roughly to "you poor thing." It was a look of shame and pity mixed with a little embarrassment. I didn't think I could feel any worse than I did at that moment. But I was wrong, because just then, my 6-year-old decided to take matters into her own hands. Allie jumped up from her folding chair, darted under the table, and popped out on the other side, running up to people in line, grabbing them by the hand and saying, "Why don't you come look at my daddy's book? It's really good." If I was getting que pobrecito looks before, hostile glares were now saying, "Get this little girl off me." I didn't think I could feel any worse than I did at that moment. But I was wrong again. Because just then my beautiful wife came walking up, and she wasn't alone. You see, it turned out that she'd run into the great big famous potential client at the breakfast buffet and convinced him to come with her to my triumphant book signing, promising him a free copy and the opportunity to talk to her brilliant designer superstar husband about his company's latest design project. She'd even told him they probably wouldn't have to wait in line. Little did she know how very right she was about the waiting in line thing. My wife and my potential dream client stood there dumbfounded, while I sat behind my piles of books and pens, watching my daughter trying to drag reluctant people over to my booth. By this time, Steph had sold all of his books and was posing for photos with the hordes of grinning fans who had gotten one of his precious signed volumes. At that moment, I was too dejected and stunned to understand what had just happened. But I spent the next 2 years thinking about it and trying to figure out how to make sure that it never happened again. My experience that day, and everything I've learned over subsequent days and years, has helped me build a vibrant brand and a robust business. And that's what I want to share with you in this book. Because my road to Damascus moment, experienced in the back of an expo hall in some hotel in Chicago, taught me the most important thing I know about how to get ahead in business and life. Let me share a few more details I didn't think were important at the time, but became more and more vital the more I thought about the situation. Remember how I told you that Steph and I were both invited to the conference before our books were released? This meant that the people waiting in line had never seen the contents of either my book or Steph's. Except for perhaps having glimpsed the odd article in some obscure design magazine, no one knew anything about either volume. They were queuing up to buy our products sight unseen. To make matters worse, our big, beautiful coffee table books were tightly bound in clear shrink-wrap plastic. The people waiting in line couldn't have looked inside if they wanted to. Even putting a few unwrapped books on the tables wouldn't have helped, because Steph's line was too long to tolerate anyone standing there leisurely paging through his or my work. Talk about not judging a book by its cover. The covers really were the only input the people waiting in line had to guide their decision. But the difference between our two books, besides the cover designs, was that Steph's was written by a known quantity, a celebrity even, and my book was written by a nobody. You see, I figured out years later that not one person at that design conference on that dreary day in Chicago was buying either one of our books because of their contents. They were buying a little piece of Steph. They most certainly were not buying a little bit of me. After all, I was a good designer, but Steph was a good designer with a strong brand and strong brand recognition, and that made all the difference in the world. This simple little point, this seemingly obvious observation, was the bolt of lightning that changed how I looked at marketing and business, and now informs how I market myself and run my own business. More, this little insight led to a comprehensive marketing strategy that ultimately led to my books and my blog, as well as my weekly appearances on national TV and the opportunities those activities have created for me. The obvious takeaway would be that Steph sold more books simply because he knew who he was. In other words,